sky. I can go twice as high. In a book, let's take a look. Reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. In a book, let's take a look. Reading rainbow. I can be anything. In a book, take a look. Reading rainbow. Reading rainbow. Hello friends, okay, I think we need to discuss this primarily because so there is a lot of outrage, but I feel that there isn't enough outrage. I feel that there's not enough people speaking out against this and not enough people discussing this with the nuance that it genuinely deserves. And I feel that it's time that we discussed transphobia in the state. And how the state basically issues transphobia through a systemic course of time. So we're going to be discussing a lot of things here. I'm going to give you a content warning right off the bat. I didn't type it out this time, I apologize, but I'll give you the content warning here. We are going to be talking about anti-transgender legislation. We are going to be talking about Ohio. There's some shit to say about Ohio. And then we will be talking about an essay from here called Straightness Must Be Destroyed. I want to make it clear that when we talk about straightness, we are not talking about a heterosexual relationship. I mean, of course, straightness is part of, let me try that again. Heterosexual relationships is part of straightness, but straightness is the idea that heterosexual relationships are somehow a default. We are critiquing the concept in which when a child is born, they are by default, just by mandatory, they are by default straight or heterosexual, right? So the child can never grow up and, eventually learn about their true self or their identity. Identity is pretty important, especially in people's ability to maintain their mental health. So the state, when it tries to push these anti-transgender legislation, we're looking at a coercive force. So that's what I'm here to argue today. So yes, the transphobia will be a huge talking point in this. We are going to be talking about like a queer and anarchist critique of the state. So we will be speaking. I will be speaking from my own experiences as a trans person. I feel that because we're talking about legislation that targets children, I feel that we need to mention that there will be child abuse mentioned and results of that. I want to talk about how these things are detrimental to LGBT people, queer and trans people. And I want to make sure that this is emphasized here that trans rights are human rights. Just like how animal rights are human rights. Everyone's rights are human rights. We should stand in solidarity and not fear each other, And I think that's a justified and important goal when we discuss this. Because I feel that a lot of the time the trans voice is often silenced. And it's often silenced along with a large number of other disabled and colonized and marginalized people. So we're going to be discussing all these things, and I want to make sure that everyone is cozy, everyone understands what this discussion is going to entail. It is going to get extremely heavy at times, and I don't advise sticking around if it is going to cause you emotional trauma, flashbacks, any kind of emotional turmoil throughout this. Please seek self-care. Do what you can to take care of yourself. It is a priority, but we are talking about something the community needs to be aware of, and there is a consistent trend of this. So we're gonna start now. I also do want to say hello to VCIR. Thank you for coming in. I love those emotes. They're very beautiful. I've been debating putting emotes like on screen. I would like to maybe explore that. Not that I don't know how to, it's just I have a fear of platforming hate speech if someone wants to come in and start bullshit. Sometimes I'm also reading and I don't want to see emotes, so it's a little difficult for me. So that's why I don't put emotes on the stream, but I plan to maybe at some point. Anyone in the chat or in the comments may feel free to make some suggestions. Anyway, so today, okay, so listen, folks. Listen, folks. We gather around. I got something to tell y'all. Okay, so we're starting to see more like of this general transphobia that is extremely mainstream. And I think this is not new if we look far back enough. I mean, we look at the movie Ace Ventura, for example. We look at, you know, several instances where male characters dress up as female, and you know, they like invade women's privacies, and that's in like the shows. That's like written in the shows. It's a stereotype. It's what you will, and I think it's harmful, like, because it makes an assumption, right? It makes an assumption that trans people are inherently trying to do that. Are there people who have done that in the past? Of course. Like Steven Crowder, for example, who tried to do that shit for a stunt because he's a comedian or something like that. I mean, he's a pretty shitty comedian, but there was this one time when he like did a skit, and it was at like a university, and a bunch of like labor organizers were like, you know, kicking his ass. That was pretty funny, actually. I think that was probably Steven Crowder's like best skit. I think that was actually like comedic genius, because it's good. It's a good time seeing like labor organizers like, you know, fucking kick his ass. Kind of like, you know, an interesting form of satire that is real satire, if you think about it. Layers, you know, layers. So, but you get what I mean. Like, there's really bad and disingenuous and ultimately harmful forms of transphobia, like in popular media. And of course, this has conditioned people to fear trans people. I don't know why there is not a fear for the gender binary, which is man and woman. It is the heterosexual or heteronormative understanding of what we are forced into, like coerced into in our social society, societal norms, if you will. So let's define a few things first. We already defined straightness, right? So we define straightness as kind of like a coerced idea that being straight when you were born is by default. So we discussed that, and it's just like, you know, straightness being something that is by default, it doesn't align with evolutionary biology, for example. Of course, like, you know, to reproduce, yes, but there are sometimes even species that deviate from that. For example, like you look at seahorses that like seahorses, males, I believe male seahorses, yeah, could get pregnant. That's right. And, you know, like, there are even insects where the female insect will eat the male insect's head. It's fucking bananas. It's so fucking bananas. Like, nature deviates from that gender norm. Like, but I mean, of course, you know, when we're talking about breeding, right? To breed, of course, yes, the sexes have to be opposite, or, well, I don't know. I mean, we can go further into that rabbit hole another time, but I will say this much, and that is, sex and gender they're mutually exclusive. Like, we're talking about, like, an identity versus, like, an anatomy, right? These are two totally different, like, schools of like, system to understand. You know, like, for example, we're talking about, like, the understanding of the anatomy of the reproductive system and the reproductive system, if we will, of one sex or the other sex. Identity is cultural, it's even linguistic. You know, identity is in many ways actually even more dimensional than 2 or 3 or 4. Like, you know, you can identify not even just through gender, but just like through what your beliefs are, what you're affiliated with, what you know, which side of one issue, you know, you stand on, or something like that. These are identifiers. These are what tells people who you are, you know. So if you look into that, like, right, and we really talk about, like, the difference between sex and gender, these are mutually exclusive. So when we talk about, like, cis heteronormativity, we're talking about two different things: cis normativity and heteronormativity. Cis heteronormativity. And when we're talking about cisgender, we're talking about people who are born assigned, who are born and they are assigned to the gender that they are born as, and they identify that way too. So if you were assigned male at birth and you also identify with your gender, that you are also aligned with that sex, then you are cisgender. That is your identity. Transgender people have different identities than that gender binary. I think that's really more of a linguistics kind of thing. And it's really, like, also too, like, when you look at the Bible, several versions of the Bible, including King James Bible. King James Bible, he, you know, I think several others too, but more specifically King James Bible has God in capital fucking letters. Like, they use he pronouns, but in capital fucking letters. Like, you can't tell me that they put capital letter he pronouns for a deity that is arguably maybe or may not be false, depending on who you ask, but as science has tested, hasn't been really scientifically proven to exist yet. It's really a spiritual being that the word is diagram is not the word. Diaspora, we'll go with diaspora for now. I think there's another word I'm looking for though. That a diaspora of people believe in, you know, Christians, and even they are diverse, right? They have different beliefs, and they even, you know, originate from different social classes. Jews too, you know, Muslims too, Buddhists too, atheists too, agnostic people too, Wiccans. Oh, I mean, seriously, Wiccans are bougie by design. I mean, cottagecore and shit and all that. But it's at the same time, like, you know, when we and by the way, when I say Wiccan is bougie by design, I'm talking about like the gentrification of witchcraft, and that's a whole other discussion for another time. But that is what I'm referring to on that, the commodification of a spirituality. So anyway, I want to kind of like move on to what we're dealing with today, and we are dealing with a sort of what I would call a, well, let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. Okay, so I'm taking a deep breath because it's just gonna get heavy. You know, it is gonna get heavy at some point, and I do want to kind of prepare everyone because we're gonna be dealing with some serious graphage, and we're going to be reading an article, and we're going to be reading a piece of legislation that is being proposed in one state, and then we're going to go ahead and, well, essentially start reading from the book Clearing Anarchism. But I really want to emphasize here that this is alarming. This is shit that has already been either proposed or passed. Pay attention to your state if you're in the United States. I also want to make one thing really clear, and that is, I don't think it's okay for people to make fun of other people from other states. Like, I feel that is classist. There are other states that are richer and more developed than the other because they have been expropriating the resources, and some of them are big trade economies like California and New York. But there are poor people in those communities too, like Los Angeles and New York and Philadelphia, Portland, Atlanta, you know, Miami. There are poor people who live there. And they too are a victim of gentrification and violent anti-trans laws. You know, I think it's important that we don't attack people from there, but that we use this at the time to recognize that there is a place for, like, you know, ensuring that we put pressure against these bills that are being proposed. Also, I do want to say that the source I got this from, which it is in the comments below, not the comments, the description below, but I would like to make sure that you know that this was last updated April 15th of this year. So that means it's probably not updated, but I wanted to kind of give you a spectrum of what had already happened in the collective year of 2021, at least in the beginning, because like if it's really bad in the beginning of the year, you got to imagine it's getting pretty bad right now. And we will be talking about Ohio specifically as an example. We will be talking about other states as well and stuff like that. So let's see here. We're looking at this one. Okay, cool. So states that have introduced bills this session targeting ID restrictions, curriculums, restrictions, and civil rights protections. So that's alarming because that's a huge First Amendment violation. First Amendment violation. Holy shit, yo. Seriously? Damn. That's like we're off to a great start, folks. That's what we're dealing with. We got it in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota. You know, I think that's Iowa right there. That's Kentucky. That's Arkansas, and that's Arizona. The source is it's from the ACLU. So the next one we're going to take a look at is here. Did I get that wrong? Wait. No, I pressed the wrong button. My bad. Unprofessional. Oh my golly gee. So this is states that have introduced bills this session that ban transgender athletes from participating in sports consistent with their gender identities. Looks like here, Iowa passed a similar ban in 2020, but a ruling by a federal judge had prevented the state from enforcing it. And then in South Dakota, Governor Christie Noem vetoed the bill, sent to her desk, but enacted the ban via 2 executive orders. So we're looking at three states. I know 3 states doesn't, seem like much, but I got people who I know there who are trans. So I don't know. It's just like, it's kind of one of those things where I'm saying, like, talking shit about people from certain states, like why you live in a southern state or something like that is reductive. It's like saying why you live in colonized Palestine, Israeli invaded colonized settler state of within the Palestinian territory, like fucking. Like, and then you say, like, you're LGBT, well, I mean, it sucks, maybe you should move out of there. Like, you can't do that. Like, that's because, not, like, first of all, like, that's assuming they have the resources to fucking leave. And secondly, there's the principle of, why should they fucking leave to begin with? Honestly, like, being homeless is, like, usually about, like, not being allowed to be somewhere at a certain time most of the time. It's fucking bullshit. Like, and, a lot of people, they suffer as a result of that because of policies passed like this shit. I mean, we're talking even foreign policies. We've talked about foreign policies on this channel before, and how foreign policies, like, they affect trade in a beneficial way, but really screw over poor and basically expropriated countries by richer nations like the U.S. empire. So, yeah, we talk about this shit, and it's just like, we need to remember that people's lives matter, especially when they are being colonized and marginalized in a hierarchical capitalist system like this one. So let's move on from here. Number of anti-transgender bills introduced in state legislature each year. So we got bathroom locker room bans and youth sports bans. And then we got bans with restrictions on transgender medical care and others. So, 2021, that's alarming. Honestly, like, it's even happening in my state too. In my state, it has a huge trans community over here, actually. And I think that's bullshit, that there is this shit going on, and like there's not really much of a pushback here. Like, there is pushback, but it's like there should be like a more like well, let me put it this way, like, because we have a trans community out here, we actually had some legislators try to pass like anti-trans like sports rights bills. I don't know what you want to call those, like, prohibiting trans people from sports. We'll call it that. First one on blue right there. And it's just like, I remember the org that we have out here, they were telling everyone that they had to do this shit for like 8 hours. Like, they had to fucking yell at the city council for 8 hours and tell them, like, why this is not okay. Like, I feel that, like, a lot of times, though, this type of shit happens because people are not educated on, well, let's put it simply, like, what it is to be trans, like, what does being trans mean? What are the things that trans people need to survive, to be healthy? And it's just like, that's because the state is preventing all of that from being accessible or even, you know, educated about. Like, for example, when I go to the doctor, I have to be the one to explain shit to them. Like, this person went to a university and got probably like a doctorate, PhD, and all that shit, masters and whatever. And then they fucking, you know, they come up to me after I schedule an appointment and wait 3 months to see them. You know, they don't know what HRT means. They don't know what, like what the process is. They don't have answers to shit like that. Now, there are doctors who do have this understanding, and there are doctors who are wonderful at what they do at their job. I've met them, I've worked with them, and they're fantastic. I have a current, I also have a doctor right now who is fantastic as well. But like, what I'm trying to say is that to the regular practitioner, it's really scarce to find, like, you know, basic healthcare that is, you know, effective to what trans people need. Also, a lot of resources are not trans friendly, though that has been changing over the years, but not a lot of places have development for that type of shit. So like, the state that I'm in and the state I was in before, they both had different like strengths and weaknesses in the resources for trans people department. For example, it's much easier. Hold on. I apologize if that was loud. I get through it. Never mind. I should drink some water, actually. 1 second. Water is important. I am streaming after all. I'm not just doing a presentation. Damn it. Y'all be making sure you're drinking some water too, baby. Alright, so what I'm trying to say basically, and I might just want to wrap up what I was saying because I gotta move on and I gotta move on to the next thing, it's that it's just really hard to get, like, transgender services, you know. And I think it's important that we make an outcry for this shit. Okay, so so I've been talking a lot about, like, discrimination, right? And in the past we talked about how, you know, when the state is kind of like coerced by the people to make amendments in its laws because of, you know, social injustice. The state has a history of redefining laws and basically, like, finding ways to dishonestly kind of shift the goalposts towards depression. So we talked about the quote-unquote black codes that the states were passing during the Jim Crow era and right before the Civil Rights Movement, you know, and then all the way up to the modern day prison and police industrial complex, and even military industrial complex as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of not just injustice going on, but there's also a lot of coercion going on that is perpetuating and enforcing that coercion. Now, I want to show you this, and it's just like, because we're going to start talking about Ohio. And again, I want to stress that, because, you know, just with the kind of like fact that we just went over like 3 other graphs that also had to do with other states. So Ohio is not an isolated incident by any means in this regard. but we're gonna look at not just this specific thing where it's the law. We're gonna talk about like what kind of people are at those city councils and, you know, testimonial hearings and shit. We're gonna talk about what kind of people are there. Let's take a look at this person.
Yes, vaccines do harm people. By the way, so I just found out something when I was on lunch and I wanted to show it to you. We were talking about Dr. Tenpenny's testimony about magnetic vaccine crystals. So this is what I found out. So I have a key and a bobby pin here. Explain to me why the key sticks to me. It sticks to my neck, too.
Sticks to your nuts?
Yeah, so if somebody could explain this, that would be great. Any questions?
Wait. Any questions?
Yes, vaccines do harm people.
Oh God, no.
By the way, so I just found out
Please
something
stop.
when I was on lunch and I wanted to show it.
I don't care. Okay, can you please shut up? Okay, so hold on a hot diggity second. I am super confused right now. So are you telling me that you did not know how to prove your point and you asked the audience to explain your point for you and then you said, any questions? Like, as in, you want us to ask you the questions or should we ask the other person the question? So, either way, I just wanna... Damn, okay. So, if we're... Okay, so... What the hell was she talking about? She was talking about magnetics or some shit like that. It's... Obviously, magnetics is its own field of study. But she's making this broader, like, rabbit hole, dog whistly point that, you know, vaccines causes autism and it's through magnetics or some shit like that that's in the vaccines, and it's really like some it's really disinformation. Like, first of all, she mentions that vaccines are harmful. So vaccines are not harmful. Vaccines is community care. Like, I know people who got their entire families fucking killed and, like, just erased because of COVID-19. And COVID-19 is, while it is not seen to seem to go away, it's not going to go away. Like, you know, it's not predicted to be going away anytime soon, at least not in our fucking lifetimes. But even then, it's just like, why the fuck on earth would you want to prevent the eradication of this virus, you know? On top of that, though, and let's be real here for a second. Let's be real here. Like, a lot of this is to kind of scare people to get vaccines, and they are weaponizing autistic people as a way to, in one way or another, pretty much fearmonger people into, like, dying. It's fascist propaganda, really. Like, people die as a result of not getting, you know, measles vaccines and flu shots and all that shit. You know, like, measles came back because of rumors like that. Like, we're talking about not just people, like adults, but also children, like, getting killed because of this shit. You know, she mentioned crystals earlier. It's like this, the same group of people, who that woman was a part of, literally just, like, believes that crystals are, you know, to be, you know, taken more seriously than medicine. you know, sure, okay, and I will give a little bit of credit where credit is due. Vaccines in the past have been used to kill people of color, and that is true. But you know that when she is talking about that, she's not talking about that history. She's talking about what a vaccine's intention is used for. And by the way, the autism stigma, it roots from an organization called Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks, I've done a video partially about them before on numerous occasions. I've also made other videos about autism and subjects related to autism. But Autism Speaks is an organization that is largely within the financial interest to bank on the subject matter of autism to promote genocide and eugenics. Like, they pretty much treat autism as a disease, an unfortunate, you know, side effect of or birth defect. That's what they treat it as. And so they do also inadvertently perpetuate the spread of diseases like measles and the coronavirus and things like that, because they don't spread. They do spread misinformation that leads into a rabbit hole that leads people into, you know, questioning vaccines from a pretty bad faith angle and perpetuating harm onto others as a result of it. A lot of these people also become, like, you know, fascist in some aspect. Eco-fascist, white nationalist, you know, it's just like maybe some anarcho-capitalist shit. Maybe even some, and I'd say anarcho-capitalist as some kind of, you know, perverted fucking nightmare of a fictional world or whatever. But anyway, you can see that this is a rabbit hole for disaster. And that's why these people who are at the podium here, like this woman is here, I'm gonna have to switch it on again. Switch that one on again. And I would like to mute her.
Yes, vaccines do harm.
Thank you. I should have had this on the whole time. It would have made more sense. But yeah, people like her, they're the ones who are making testimonies in the councils like Ohio, right? And so now that Ohio is, you know, proposing anti-trans legislation, you know, to a degree that we're threatening children, I think that raises a lot of red flags, and I think we need to spotlight this, and we need to look really deep into this to critically think and analyze how we can put a stop to this. So I'm also gonna say that you should call your senators, not just if you're in Ohio. If y'all can, you know, maybe plug in some phone numbers, and we can, you know, start getting people to call senators in certain states that are doing this shit on a regular basis, then by all means, go right ahead. You can reach me at Discord. Let's see. I can't get the link right now, but you can message me on Discord. I am there, and I have my server and stuff. So you can go there and ask me to make like a poster or something, and I can put it in my, you know, community tab in YouTube, and we'll do this like on a regular basis. I'll like release it every day, you know, like new state, yo, new poster. Get this shit like out of the fucking office, you know what I'm saying? No, none of this bullshit, for real. Like, seriously? Damn, that was such good water. Make sure you're drinking water, folks. Okay, so everyone, let's breathe in and breathe out. I'm about to show you the bill that is being proposed in Ohio. I'm gonna warn you, the language in it is we might not even read the whole thing. Honestly, we might not. But I am going to say right now, it will be extremely fucking heavy. So, we're not just looking at some heavy material, we're also looking at some horrible fucking language, like slurs. We're looking at like a general, like, second-class citizenry of trans people. We're looking at like people's, like, children's, like, inability to seek mental health, to be able to be themselves. We're looking at like what I would say is coded fascist policies. And when I say fascist, by the way, I'm gonna make sure that we emphasize here, I am referring to an ideology that not only relies on authority, but also specifically focuses on maintaining an us and other, a mythological us and other, an us and them relationship with other people groups. So when I talk about fascism, I'm talking about like ultra-nationalist pieces of shit that want to, maintain cis heteronormative culture and straightness. And then we will be reading from, like I said, after this, from the book after a break. So let's do this. You have been warned. Okay, so let's see. Oh, this is not a document, by the way. This is the one. We're gonna go with this one here, though. So, Ohio becomes second to last state to allow transgender people to update their birth certificate. My grandpa's from Ohio. He's a pretty shitty person, TBH. Let's take a look real quick. Transgender people in Ohio will soon be able to change their birth certificate to reflect a gender different than the one they were assigned at birth, leaving Tennessee the lone state to still bar such alterations. Wow, holy shit. Yo, okay, so, like, on surface level, this sounds great. Ohio is allowing this to be legal. That's great. But why is it not being done sooner? Like, why are we still, like, having to fight for not just this, but also several other rights? Like abortion not just affects, like cis-normative, I'm sorry, they don't just affect cisgender women. There we go, that's what I meant to say. It does affect trans men, non-binary folk. It affects trans people, trans women who have had vaginoplasty surgery. It affects intersex people. It affects everyone. Like, women's rights is human rights. Trans rights is human rights. So when we're talking about Ohio passing a bill being second to last, that's not a fucking victory lap. Like, that's honestly, we need to keep going. We need to fucking go. We need to fucking get that shit on the fucking roll. Like, Tennessee? Yeah. But I'm talking about liberation. I'm talking about, like, actually, like, organizing, like, a counter, what's the word? Insurgency? I don't know. Use your imagination. In a video game, of course. But I'm talking about, like, something that consistently challenges the status quo, something that directly challenges the status quo, something that does this normally, and that does involve, organizing with working people, organizing with disabled people, organizing with Black and Indigenous people of color. That does involve organizing with everyone, including trans people. And that's what I mean. We need that solidarity. I'm just flabbergasted that let's see, such harassment towards transgender people is not unique. 56% of Ohioans, okay? I guess my grandfather's an Ohioan. I'm a granddaughter of an Ohioan piece of shit. Anyway, but responded to a National Center for Transgender Equality survey, said that they were verbally harassed, denied benefits or services, asked to leave, or assaulted after showing an ID with a name or gender that did not match their gender presentation, NBC News reported. Holy shit, it's just that sucks. That really sucks. That sucks. That sucks so much. That sucks. It sucks. It sucks. It sucks. It fucking sucks. Because it's true. It's I can't go outside without thinking I'm gonna be jumped by some fucking Confederate pieces of shit down the street or whatever. Some fucking, goddamn fucking Proud Boy pieces of shit. I hate them. I hate them because it's just I don't know if I'm ever gonna be fucking jumped by them. I don't know. I have been jumped by some fucking cops before. It's not fun. It's never fun. It's fucking scary even. Jesus Christ. Holy guacamole. But now we're gonna talk about this one. I'd say strap in. Let's see. It's a bit lengthy. I don't think we're gonna be reading everything, but I will scroll through it a bit. Okay, a bill to enact section 3129.01. Okay. Shit. Okay. Of the revised code to prohibit certain procedures to alter a minor child's sex and to designate this act as the Save Adolescents from Experimentation Act, or SAFE. So that's what I mean. That's what I was referring to. I tried to give a huge warning for this name because it is literally some fascist shit. We talked about this before on the channel, and I feel like every time this shit comes up, where straight people, straight politicians, male politicians, fundamentalist religious politicians, they always weaponize children. They always do this shit. They always say, think of the children, focus on the family, back in control, PMRC this shit. Kappa, Pippa, fucking, SOPA, all this shit. All of this shit is a weaponization of children. Yet they close the fucking doors to the Catholic Church. They turn a blind eye for that shit. When there's priests, they get called out on and even prosecuted finally. Oftentimes they have bake sales and fundraisers for that guy, and then they can fucking ship him off to another town if there's too much pressure. There's a whole history on that. Look at Brendan Smith. He's just one case out of 800 for a whole course of 70 fucking years of rampant priestly pedophilia. This is what I mean, like there is child abuse that is on a very systemic level. The fact that these services are not available to children, like we're talking about like basic health care, we're talking about like necessities to raise children, these things are not available to children on a nationwide or even a global wide level, especially if we're talking about in a pandemic while we are under a coercive state of capitalism. If we're talking about living under a coercive state of capitalism during a pandemic, then that coercive state of capitalism has to be effectively, not just in theory, but effectively, with material proof, holistically maintaining the survivability of the well-being of all, right? When we're talking about the legitimacy of a state like capitalism, when we're talking about that, we need to remember that capitalism is a dominant force. And so and the anarchist approach to understanding whether or not capitalism is justified or not is that we question whether or not it is effectively maintaining the benefit of all, the well-being of all, the survivability of all. And if it doesn't do that in theory, you know, or even in practice for that matter, or praxis even, what I mean, it's fucking reverse praxis. It's counter praxis. It's going to lead to extinction based on the trend that it will take us to. And the reason why I bring all this up, by the way, to kind of plug everything what I just said to here, is because there is no saving adolescence from experimentation shit going on here. This is a perpetuation of adolescence within experimentation. The fucking gender binary is an experimentation. White supremacy is an experimentation. Any class, colonial, fucking fascist system is an experimentation to try to see how much fucking resources you can reap and expand your fucking imperialist power to fucking goddamn reap all the fucking resources so you can gluttonize your fucking way to Mars, you goddamn fucking pieces of crooked ass, crony ass pieces of shit. So yes, this is child abuse. This bill is child abuse. By nature, by its own design, it is counterintuitive to what this fucking thesis statement is claiming that it is to be. This is the most dribblest fucking horseshit I have ever fucking... Check. Okay. I want to thank my mod here. I will check the chat. Okay. Testify. No audio. Okay. So what was the last thing that I said? I want to make sure that I catch that so I can start from that point. I appreciate my mods for telling me and reporting it to me. That was helpful. What was the last thing I said? I can talk about what I was saying before, but I gotta know where my starting point was. I apologize for those watching, and this is unprofessional, but you know what? It wouldn't be a left-wing stream without a mistake or two. But anyway, okay, well, let's just do this. I'm going to talk about this section here. Okay, so this statement is bullshit because like this is assuming like this is like fiction here. This isn't even a law. This is like fiction here. This is an assumption of its own roles. It's making it's an assumption of its own role in society, and it is counterintuitive to its own fucking role. So let's look into this real quick. So we're talking about like, you know, how it handles children, right? Again, if it really cared about children, it would focus heavily on making sure all children, not some children where their parents had to fight for disability and TANF and shit over a long period of time, over several years, to be able to get like enough fucking benefits to be able to sustain themselves when they're in poverty. No, I'm talking about all children, homeless children, refugees, children who are affected by U.S. imperialism, all children. So this is bullshit, like right off the fucking bat. And even if we're talking about, you know, American children, which is probably what this is making the assumption on that this is covering, no, it doesn't do that. Because if it by chance did that, then still all children would be able to be sustained. Not only that though, but let's talk about abortion for a second, right? We're talking about abortion, and you know, we have the whole fucking heated apparatus of the exclusion of being able to get an abortion, the revoking of Roe versus Wade, the complete destruction of people's very autonomy, and it's like when those children are born because of some fucking Reaganomics fucking goddamn propaganda that they were fed many years ago to, you know, basically perpetuate abstinence-only sex education that barely teaches jack all about gender or maintaining relationships and also maintaining healthy relationships on top of like several other things like consent. This is like Reagan era fucking abstinence-only sex I'm talking about here, and that in itself is child abuse, right? And so when we're talking about like the state's ability to protect vulnerable children, no, it makes children more vulnerable. It makes children even more vulnerable because it forces people who are even raped to be unable to get the resources that they need to be safe. There is this stigma that I think is justified in pro-lifers. That is that they care about children up until that they are born. Then the child is disposable under the capitalist system as long as it can maintain its legitimacy in being alive in the labor force. You know, and if they can't do that, then capitalism's like, well, sorry, can't do much for you. It doesn't give back to them because capitalism is it's all about expanding and perpetually reaping the resources from others, including labor and the means of production and resources necessary to survive. Goods and services and all that shit. So this is bullshit. Only a tiny percent of American population experience distress at identifying with their biological sex. I'd like to see a study for that, and I'd like to see a citation for that. I don't know if they do introduce one here, but I will say that that is a loaded statement. On top of that, if only a tiny percent of the American population experiences distress at identifying with their biological sex, and they're truly the minority in this demographic here, then I must pose the question, what are they, chopped liver? Are we chopped liver to you if we are truly the minority here? If we are that, do we just not deserve to exist? So this is what I mean. This is like absolutely fascist propaganda. This is just fascist propaganda packaged into a potential bill that can be passed. According to the American Psychiatric Association, by the way, I've heard arguments made against this organization, the American Psychiatric Association. They're also the same group of people who advocate that children should be spanked, and that's fucking whack as all. Like, that's, I mean, when you are spanked, I don't think that you learn that something is bad. You learn to fear. You learn to fear. You know, it's just like that's a boundary. I think that usually a lot of parents are afraid to set with their children, and that leads to other, you know, slippery, slopey, awful things down the line that I think people should not. I don't know, I feel really uncomfortable saying it sometimes, but I do think that this is what stems pedophilia sometimes. It's like the unquestioning of child abuse, like, and the normalization of child abuse through the language of a preventative measure of child abuse. And what I mean by that is that, again, this whole thing that we're reading here is packaged in a way that specifically is to give the impression that this is protecting children. But we know that, historically speaking, bills like this prevent children from surviving and being safe and healthy. Let's continue. Studies consistently demonstrate that the vast majority of children who are gender nonconforming or experience distress at identifying with their biological sex come to identify with their biological sex in adolescence or adulthood, thereby rendering most medical health care interventions unnecessary. That is a load of shit. Because first of all, why is this an assumption that their biological sex is going to be the same as the gender they identify throughout their whole life or even in the beginning? What makes this assumption consistent other than the coercion of this bill in the first place? Like, it already admitted that there is, and even acknowledged that there is, in fact, a demographic, though it has reported in this to be very small, but I argue otherwise. This is just ridiculous, honestly. Like, 99.9% of trans people don't go back to, you know, their previous gender identity. Like, there is 1% who actually go back and detransition, if you will. They do exist, and they're valid. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's justified. I think it's justified that if you are trying to figure out your identity and you feel that you were wrong about something, it's okay to, you know, think about it longer. You don't have to have an answer today. You know what? You don't even have to have an answer when you're a child. Some children, honestly, they do have those thought processes on their own. For example, me. I too also had that thought process. I remember one time I was thinking like gender is really weird because it's just like gender, like, and I'm talking about like when I was like 12 years old. I was like, gender is really weird because it's just like there's a weird I don't know. It felt there was a weird dissociation there. And I felt that like a version of myself can be manifested if I actualize it in my personhood. And like that was like my thought process at the time. And maybe that's a flawed thought process, but you know what? With given the fact that I never really ever was taught at a young age and educated about what it means to be transgender and what being transgender entails, you know, I never got that education. I got that like firsthand. And if you're trying to answer the question of why there are a huge spike of people identifying as transgender today, well, being transgender isn't new. Being transgender is something that predates the gender binary, even predates colonialism. Like, I like even indigenous nations and like nation states and cultures across the whole world, even in every continent, had a different understanding and system for, you know, what they had for gender. You know, a lot of it was very spiritual, even. I think that when we talk about, you know, like whether or not, you know, identifying as transgender is quote unquote natural or not, you know, as many Christians will often say that, or not Christians, but I want to say more like fundamentalist, far-right Christians, those who advocate against, you know, transgender rights and abortion rights and women's rights and stuff like that. These people tend to make this case that trans people are, you know, destroying the image that God created. And I think that's a load of shit. That by design is a flawed way of thinking. Because first of all, we already have discussed previously that there are different interpretations of what God is. And your God is not the same as some other Christian's God, or another Jew's God, a Jewish person's God, or a Muslim's God, or you know, a Buddhist God. Anyway, even within the own ranks of Christianity, I'm not even talking about just established belief systems. I'm talking about in terms of a culture. I'm talking about individual people. Even Giordano Bruno, who was a Dominican friar in the Vatican, even he had a deep connection with God, and he loved God, and he wanted to learn more about God, and he was all about God. But his love for God, it actually evolved into his love for learning more about the universe that, in his view, God created. He was burned at the stake for that after he was already excommunicated and sentenced to prison for 7 years, because of these beliefs. And he was among their ranks. He was among the people that actually believed in the same God he did, or so they believed. They believed that their God in the Vatican, and they do believe that their God in the Vatican is a monolith, is a monolithic being with a monolithic set of standards and values. And that's the problem with a coercive force or a coercive hierarchy, especially like in the Catholic religion or the Catholic institution rather, or within like, you know, legislation like this. I think we're going to get into some extremely heavy territory here, and I really don't want to get into this because I think you already got a good idea of what we're talking about here. But I think what I'm trying to say is that now is a good time, if anything, to start really, and I mean really, discussing like how we can push pressure against this shit. I think that's important because if we're pushing pressure against the bullshit that is the that is systemic transphobia, then I think we need to, you know, do some more organizing in the streets. We do need some more organizing when we see fascists having parades. I do think also, like, when you see fascists, and when I say fascists, I'm referring to, like, these reactionaries who identify with the Blue Lives Matter movement, Patriot Prayers, Patriot Front, Proud Boys, traditionalist movements, and white nationalist, white power movements, and the alt-right. I'm referring to these. So when I'm talking about, like, these institutions, like these fascist reactionary movements organizing in the streets and causing a disturbance and an unsafe environment, that has to be met with resistance. Like, and I actually, in some cases, I'm risking my life saying this. I wish I had the link to this article offhand, but recently in Florida, I believe, there was someone who was arrested for saying that there needs to be more militant defense of marginalized and colonized people. Someone was arrested for saying that. Like, and not just arrested, folks. We're talking about, like, this person was given harsher prison sentences and charges than the people at the Capitol on January 6th. Keep in mind that, you know, National Guard and the police and the state Capitol Police and all that, they are 3 times more likely to be more violent and use aggressive force to leftist protesters than they are to right-wing protesters. So I think that's alarming in a lot of ways. I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed and vocalized in our society. I think that we need to push a pressure to stop that current. But folks, we're not done, but we will be taking a break. I think we've been going for an hour and a half, and so as a result, I think it would be good that we actually start the reading portion of this. We will be doing this today, and I'll be reading this along with y'all. It's actually a pretty short chapter, and it's towards the back of the book. If you're trying to get it, it is in the description. You can read the PDF with me. Queering Anarchism. It's a great fucking book. This book fucking, like, I've read this book so many times on stream. It is fantastic. I think it's worth picking up if you want to, but you can read it for free, and that's pretty awesome too. Like, it's a collection of essays about queer anarchism and the theory behind it, and a lot of history and praxis and stuff like that. It's read by a really diverse array of anarchist writers and queer authors, and I think that this is a really good book to check out. Anyway, but we will be reading this chapter after a break called Straightness Must Be Destroyed. Take care of yourself. Do some, some self-care. And make sure that you are doing good for yourself, Bathroom, smoke break, get a snack, take your medicine. Make sure you get some water. And yeah, take care, friends. I'll be back. I'll be back shortly. Hello, friends. Yes, friends. We're back, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, everyone. How you doing? I wanted to hope that my breaks, especially like in those, are relaxing and also kind of help people breathe while they kind of like just engage in the content. So let me know if there are certain elements of that specific section that you'd like to see. I returned just in time too. Hello, Tempest. Good to see you. I heard that I accidentally answered one of your questions earlier. So, but yeah, I think it was the one where you asked what I was talking about with, what was it? Oh, what was I talking about before the muted part? I wanted to, because like I wasn't reading chat that whole time. Hello, Whisker Scuttlebum. It's good to see you. It's been a long time since I've seen you. I appreciate that. So for those who are actually just tuning in, we actually have not started reading this yet. We actually talked in great detail about a lot of anti-trans legislation and anti-trans violence coerced by the state and those who have a capitalist interest. I also want to make it known that, like, when we're talking about, like, you know, performative, you know, liberal tactics for, you know, social justice and all that, we're talking about, like, the adverse effects of, like, rainbow capitalism as well. Like, the campaigning that Chase does, or Bank of America does, or that Walmart does, you know, T-Mobile does. Like, okay, you know, it's good. I like seeing Black Lives Matter. I like seeing LGBT rights and trans rights and stuff. I like seeing it, but I like seeing it but for real. Not like, you know, sell me this image of the content, the idea of it. Don't commodify, like, the queer revolution and queer liberation. Don't commodify social justice. Like, you know, and that's kind of like part of, like, the inevitable kind of like downfall of capitalism is that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. Like, no ethical consumption at all. Like, consumption exists under capitalism and it is unethical on all fronts, like whether you're a leftist or otherwise. Sure, you can even say worker cooperative, but you're still competing against other businesses in a trend that is focused on profit and expansion. So that's alarming, you know, and that's just because it exists doesn't mean that it should exist at all in the first place. It's not a justification for it existing if it exists, you know, against our will, you know, coercively. So straightness is a coercive idea that we can say is the assumption that when you are born, you are by default straight. This is usually tied with a lot of, you know, Republican, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Republican, conservative, traditionalist, fundamentalist religious institutions. You know, these people, like far right fascists and TERFs. We're talking about all these people here, and they perpetuate like this society in order to create an otherization process, you know, and we've seen several intersections of this. And straightness is no different in that regard. Again, I'm going to reiterate for those who just came in what I had said at the beginning of the stream. Straightness if we're really talking about straightness here, we're not talking about like a heterosexual relationship specifically, like, you know, just like on an individual basis. We are not saying that you can't be like in a heterosexual relationship. We're not even saying you can't be in a monogamous relationship. But when we're talking about like policies that are focused super heavily on maintaining something like that coercively, like, that's when we begin to see some red flags, you know? Like, when you force people to identify a specific way, then you rob them of their autonomy to think for themselves about who they are, to kind of like live their experience, you know, to live their life, you know? I appreciate all the comments about my hair, thank you. Thank you so much. Y'all wonderful. Okay. I'm gonna go hide the chat now, sorry. I'm gonna hide you guys saying nice things about my hair. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. But yeah, I'm gonna read this now. Straightness must be destroyed. Just make sure that as you're following along, that we discuss, we include the understanding of the nuance I just gave a second ago. So, a baby is born. The doctor slaps a gender onto the body. It's a boy or it's a girl. For those whose body don't seem to fit easily into those categories, male or female, the doctor almost invariably will treat this as a medical emergency. Whew. We're off to a pretty intimidating start. The parents will be intimidated into forcing invasive surgery, mutilating the baby's genitalia, so they will appear to easily fit into these categories. For all bodies, regardless the category, it's a boy or it's a girl, must all bodies, regardless the category, it's a boy or it's a girl. Okay, I'm sorry. I reread a line. I'm sorry. For all bodies, regardless of the category, it's a boy or it's a girl, must all applied to onto the baby. There you go. From the very moment of birth, our bodies are fit into a social system in which there are two genders, built upon the myth that the two sexes are natural, quote unquote. Our heteronormative society considers it urgent that everyone be labeled boy or girl, to the point that it will not shy away from using violence against intersex bodies in order to apply these labels. Water. Everyone, water. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to pause after like maybe 1 or 2 pages. If you have any questions, I'll maybe like put the word question and then like a colon and then question, and then I can kind of like find it easier when I like read the chat. That would help a lot. That won't bother me at all if you do that. By the way, sometimes I do this with my thumb. It's not safe. It's some kind of like OCD stimming thing that I do. I don't know if I have OCD, but I do have like OCD somewhat behavior. Like, for example, like I had this thing where it's like if I rub my arm this way, I gotta go back, because it's just like it's like my brain's trying to tell me I gotta replace those skin cells. That's probably not a logical way of looking at it. That's probably not true. But my brain does it in this kind of like subconscious way, and that's kind of like where it's like whenever I do that, it's like if I rub my thumb against the arm of the chair, I have to go back, and if I do it again, I have to go back again. So it's That's what I do. I guess that's stimming. I don't know. Happens sometimes. Anyway. Some, did I read that already? Okay. Yeah, I did not read this one yet. Cool. I hope you're all having fun. Let me know if you're having fun. Or at least, like, learning. Even if it's not necessarily fun, but more like, if you're learning, and again, if you have questions, let me know. I'm actually quite interested in exploring some questions if something doesn't make sense. So for some reason, the vast majority of people identify with the gender label that was applied to them at birth without their consent. This majority of people we call cisgender. The rest of us are transgender, queer, genderqueer, gender non-conforming, etc. But then again, the vast majority of people seem to be content to go along with most things. After this, we grow and we learn about all sorts of other roles that stem from the label boy and girl. This label determines everything from what sort of toys we're supposed to play with to what sort of expectations are to be placed upon us in social situations, to what kind of sexual desires are we supposed to have. We cannot escape these assumptions. They are everywhere. Daring to transgress these norms can result in violent punishment. These norms and the threats that back them up are all a part of straightness. Straightness is not an orientation, even really an identity. Or even really an identity, but it's a system of social relations. In that regard, straightness is very much like capitalism. Straightness is a multifaceted set of social rules that police our bodies, our minds, and our desires, and the way that we interact with others. Straightness tells us that people with certain bodies have to be men, and that others have to be women. It tells us that men have to act in certain ways and women have to act in other ways. It tells us that we have a certain kind of desire and not others. It tells us that we have to fuck certain kinds of people in certain positions for certain reasons, even. We can change certain aspects of straightness, for instance, the fight for gay marriage, which seeks to allow privileges for certain monogamous, normative gay couples without challenging the state institution of marriage altogether. But ultimately, we need to destroy this system that polices every aspect of our existence, from the deeply intimate to the highly public. I want to really quickly touch on gay marriage really fast, because I feel like if I don't, people are going to comment and they're not going to understand why this person said what they said. I hit the table. I forgot to include it in the stream, but I have a button that's like, oops, my Anarchist symbol is the video. I'm gonna have like a video bite for that. I'm gonna have that next time. The one that goes, like, what kind of garbage is that? Oops, my Anarchist symbol. I'm like, I was thinking also if like ever this flag falls, I would just like include that. What kind of garbage is that? Oops, my anarchy symbol. Something like that, maybe, who knows. But the thing that they were saying about gay marriage, by the way, it's not that it's bad that they're getting married. That's good, and that they should, and that there shouldn't be state coercion in that. But like, it's really like, first of all, the state is deciding who gets to marry who in the first place, and it's like, even, you know, a consistent trend of the state legislating who can date whom. You know, for example, like, interracial marriages were illegal for a while. Like, in fact, there were like, you know, relationships that were legislated by the state, you know, like when people of color were commodified under capitalism, and they still are today, through direct legislation. And we talked about earlier in the stream and other streams that whenever there is new legislation that involves giving marginalized people their rights, there's other legislation that does all these like really consistent, like, you know, coded language in their legislation and the bills that they push to try to pass on like loopholes to the legislation that pulled out of that took away the, I don't know. I lost my train of thought there. That's okay. That's okay. The point is that I am trying to say that the state and trying to fight for legislation, it's effective. You should use it. You should do that. You should fight for legislation that protects people and trans people and marginalized people. But you should do more than that. You should try to like think more subversively and try to think of ways to kind of like dismantle the system from within. So yes, you know, I guess like harm reductive measures. Yes, of course. You know, I would rather not have to worry about the police, you know, outlawing being trans, like in public. Like that shit was normal in Germany. They had like, you know, in Germany it was like they had the Institute of Technology that there's a German name for it. I don't know how to pronounce it. I am sorry. And also, my dead last name is German and it fucking sucks and I hate it. But whatever. What I was gonna say is that in Germany, Weimar Republic, you know, there was the Institute of Technology, and they kind of like revolutionized like the practice of endo surgery and endo treatment. I'm trying to think of the word here. Endoplasty would be the word, maybe endoplasty, which would, you know, evolve into the study of what we now know about gender affirming healthcare. So I want to say that that's important history right there that is often kind of overlooked, because even, you know, when we talk about like the book burnings of the Nazis during the rise of the Weimar Republic and the rise of the Nazi Party, which led to Nazi Germany, which led to communists and anarchists and Jews and other LGBTQ plus people, intersex people included. I want to make sure I included them. You know, we were all dying, and like this is only a small part of it. This is like was a small trend that like continued to have like a big ripple effect. You know, it started here when they started burning the books, like of what they and art of what they consider to be degenerate literature or degenerate art or degenerate media. And then they go on to burn the Institute of Sexology. And the building and the property and the all of the medical findings and services and tools and resources that they had. So that's like really that's really harmful policy there. And I do think that there's a case to be said that, like, you know, comparing the US to Germany is not a reciprocal, like, comparison, but I will say that the Nazis wouldn't exist without the US empire. Like, first of all, I'm talking about, like, even Nazi Germany. Like, the US empire was not at all fucking complicit. I mean, not complicit. Just like trying to stay out and be like, you know, I got nothing to do with it. No, first of all, Hitler fucking said that the genocide of indigenous people, Native American in the US, that inspired him in Mein Kampf. Like, holy shit, yo. And then we're talking about, like, just the fact that there was a Nazi party in America even during that time. And even moving forward, like, and what eventually led to be the neo-Nazi party or the National Socialist movement. Like, and I'm just saying, it's just like, it's bullshit, because, like, these people, like, have created, like, or not just single-handedly created, but, like, systemically accelerated the ripple effect of transphobia. Like, not just in like their colonial fucking reactionary ways, but also in the result of the violence that eradicated on our understanding of gender and our understanding of you know, gender affirming healthcare and things like that. I think that's a crime against humanity. Like, to censor medical like innovation, or like just like to take like the working classes like fucking innovative fucking material that it has made on its own to better, you know, people's well-being in our society, you know, a good use of our resources, that being fucking burned by fascists. It's a huge fucking crime against humanity. It is. It absolutely is. There's no if, utter shit about it, yo. My golly gee. My golly gee. Like any system of social relations, straightness is both something that is out there in the larger world we call society, or the system, as well as someone that is inside in our heads, our hearts, our minds. It is something that we do to other people as we have done to ourselves. For people who call themselves straight, it is something that one is constantly proving and reifying. Part of this is because straightness is an impossibility. The ideal man and the ideal woman, these are impossible ideals. Nobody ever quite fits, you know, like part of straightness as a social system is the collective effort of those who subscribe to force themselves into and others around them to meet this definition, to kill the inner queer in order to fit oneself into the straight mold. There are the internal contradictions. These are the internal contradictions of straightness. And I think we're now understanding further that straightness as a societal structure is coercive. I talked about coercion in a previous video. It's my first episode of Capitalism Only Works on Paper. So go check that out. Actually pretty good. And if you want to learn more about like what coercion is and how coercion can be applied to what we talk about here on this channel, go check that one out. That's like a 20-something minute video. It's pretty alright. I hope that is something that can help further other people's understanding of it. Anyway, also, Non-Compete has done a video on coercion in the past. EJ from Non-Compete has done a video on coercion, and I think it's pretty good. And I think you should all check that one out too. Shout out to EJ and Mona. Hope y'all are doing well over there. Let's see, so... Okay. The destruction of straightness would not mean the destruction of heterosexuality. Women and men would still exist. Women and men would still fuck each other. The destruction of straightness, however, would mean the destruction of a set of norms, of assumptions, and now I lost my place, of hierarchical social relations that are forcibly imposed upon us all. The destruction of straightness would mean we no longer take it as self-evident that being born with a certain kind of body makes someone a man or a woman. The destruction of straightness would mean we no longer take it as self-evident that people with certain bodies will desire certain types of other bodies. The destruction of straightness would mean the destruction of the ideal woman and the ideal man. The destruction of straightness would mean a world in which all of our bodies, all of our desires, all of our genders, and all of our consensual sexualities would be honored and viable. So, I think it's making kind of like a point that like the way that we kind of like maintain our system is rather monolithic. And I think that we're recognizing even further that like monolithic, coercive behavior is harmful. Because it assumes that there is to be a very specific way of doing things. So it maintains that kind of tradition through like the inevitability of expansion of capitalism and imperialist violence that result in genocide and shit. Anyway, let's do this next part. There's like, how many more pages? I think I have like maybe a few more. Yeah, we got a few more. Cool beans. Clearing shit up. Queerness is, by definition, the antithesis of straightness. Queerness is the total of every desire, every body, every way of relating that is prohibited by straightness. Queerness includes gender nonconformity, transness, eroticism, BDSM, and even the radical notion that two hetero men who are friends can hold hands in public. Yep, that's pretty fucking rad. I love actually seeing like just platonic friends just cuddling and just kind of like being chill. Like I like seeing that. It's like reassuring, and it's also a display of comfort. It's pretty nice. Let me see here. Where was I? Queerness is everything straightness is not. Queerness is queer liberation. Queerness is every desire and every way of being that is forbidden under this regime. Queer liberation seeks to liberate all these forms of expression as long as they are consensual. Queer liberation is the destruction of straightness. Queer liberation is the abolition of gender hierarchies, as well as hierarchies based on sexual desire. Straightness, by contrast, is a hierarchy. Part of anarchist struggle is to create spaces outside of these hierarchies within the shadows of this world. Therefore, the destruction of straightness and the building of alternatives within the shadows is inseparable from anarchist revolution. There are people in my life who are predominantly heterosexual, who identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, who live monogamous relationships, but who I would consider queer. What do I mean by this? There is a world of difference between those who have accepted the dominant order of things because that is what they have been told and have never questioned it, and those who have actually challenged themselves. If you have searched within your soul and challenged yourself and come to the conclusion that you feel yourself to be the gender that you were assigned at birth, then that you are sexually attracted to people opposite gender, etc., then that is completely different than someone who calls themselves straight, because they have never challenged the social norms of straightness. Not questioning these norms within yourself and your relationship with others around you is to play into the dominant order of straightness. Questioning them, regardless of the conclusion you may reach, is a revolutionary act. So I think, that's a really, interesting way of looking at it, because, first of all, I've seen what I would identify as, queer kind of, identities within people who also identify as cis and heterosexual, and they also do defy gender roles at times, and it's pretty cool. I kind of like it, TBH. And sometimes they even use pronouns that they were assigned at birth too, and they still defy, gender roles, and that's really cool. I like seeing that. I like seeing people use different pronouns that they were assigned at birth as much as I see people using, pronouns assigned at birth, It's really, what your feelings are on those pronouns, Also, if your parent named you, what's your thoughts on the name? And then, what's also, your thoughts on why your parent named you that? I think, children need to be asked those questions, And I think children should have resources, maybe even exercises on how to think about these things. Activities, discussions. I think it needs to be open to them, that there's this communication that is safe for them to have. you know. That would be something that I think would be much more effective than what this fucking policy in Ohio that we were just reading a bit ago is trying to propose. This weird safety thing where it's just like, it's like does not even acknowledge how its own presence as a bill is harmful, as it advertises itself to be a safety measure for kids, which is so disingenuous. So fucking disingenuous. And that's why I'm saying, like, you gotta put pressure on this shit. You gotta call them out in this shit. You gotta fucking say it to their face. As Ron the Anarchist would say, you gotta say it to their face. I'm serious, like, you gotta tell them. You gotta tell them, be like, yo, this ain't okay. It ain't okay, friend. You better fucking back up, or we are going to maintain this acceleration of resistance, and there always will be an acceleration of resistance. Revolution's inevitable. That's a given. Exploitation's inevitable under capitalism, and if there's exploitation, there's going to be resistance. And all capitalism can do is try to make that resistance quelled and less powerful. But capitalism's not going to be able to terraform Mars anytime soon, as it continues to exploitatively engineer our species extinction, or even probably wipe all life on Earth. I don't know. I mean, like, we're looking at, I mean, with the pandemic and climate change, holy shit, I have no idea what they think they're going to be able to do in the next 10 years that's going to stop this shit from happening. Holy shit, like Jeff Bezos, if you got, like, you know, a fucking, you know, can I order, like, a magic hat that can, like, pull a trick that will, like, you know, it'll single-handedly answer that contradiction in your exploitation and your anti-union bullshit? You know what I mean, Jelly Bean? Like, because if you're selling everything, if you got your hands on literally everything, Jeff Bezos, then I'd like to have that magic hat that I can pull a trick out, like a rabbit, and the rabbit will single-handedly just, like, completely solve that contradiction that I fucking laid out. I want to see that happen. I want to see it happen. And I don't just mean make an answer, like, in a rhetorical sense with some nuance or something like that. I don't care what your explanation is. I'm not looking for an explanation. I'm looking for action. But you're not going to get action. Let's be real here. They're not going to really give us action. Like, they can do, like, these, they can put more, you know, like, mass in the office, you know, more after the unions start pressuring them some more, and I think more importantly, like, we need to keep that acceleration, but, like, these institutions need to either be collectively owned by working people, or they need to be abolished. You know, it's like, because if working people are the proletariat and the receiver of exploitation in this dynamic, then yeah, they need to be the ones doing and owning that shit, and not fucking Jeff Bezos and a few execs. Same goes for Walmart. Same goes for you know, Coca-Cola. Same goes for Disney, Fox, Time Warner, General Electric, all that shit. Like, they all need to fucking answer to that contradiction. Anyway, my apologies. I did go on a tangent. Oh, and hey, what do you know? The next section is called Straightness Doesn't Make Any Sense in the Internal Contradictions. There are internal contradictions to straightness. So what I said was not irrelevant. I did it! I did it! So I want to look at a few concrete examples of how straightness functions in our society. I want to preface with the recognition that there is tremendous diversity across cultures in terms of gender and sexual norms. In case you were wondering about my own background, I am queer, transgender, third gender anarchist. My family is Greek Egyptian, and my mother was a war refugee. I was born in the United States. I write this based on my own experience being queer in the United States, and I hope, and I do not mean to generalize this across all cultures. However, I hope that, and I believe that these ideas will prove relevant in the variety of contexts. All of these examples are imagined to as taking place in the United States, but perhaps could be translated and transformed to represent gender and sexual regimens in other cultures and other concepts. So, or contexts, actually, same shit, really, honestly. Okay, but like we were talking about that earlier when we were talking about identity, and it's just like identity means everything. Like, and you know, upholding kind of like your identity, it's also upholding like the value of your own story. You know, your journey, your narrative, like, and that's part of the reason why trans people, you know, actually on a high rate. They don't feel as bad as they did when they were in the closet. And it's better when they aren't forced in the closet by the state legislating a law saying that they have to stay in there. Ohio and every other state that's pulling this shit right now, like Florida, North Dakota, South Dakota. I mean, there's several more. Montana, I think. Shit, Montana? Fucking hell. Even the most boring states pulling this shit too. My golly gee. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so a working class, heterosexual, cisgender man wants to marry his girlfriend. His girlfriend is a heterosexual cisgender woman who comes from a middle class background, but is currently broke. She feels entitled to a very expensive diamond engagement ring. He feels slightly jilted by this. Why should I have to pay for something so expensive for her? He thinks. She feels hurt by this and feels that he doesn't love her enough. They get into a fight about it, and finally, he takes out loans and maxes out all of his credit cards to buy her the ring. The money that he borrows from the credit card industry and all which will cause him to be enslaved to debt for years to come in order to pay back goes to support of the blood diamond that are in trade of southern, central, and western Africa. Their people have been massacred, societies torn to shreds to fuel Westerners' hunger for shiny objects. That's a fucking, like, nail on the coffin point you just made there. And I think that's so beautifully put, because not only does it kind of like, you know, actually make a case where the man is a victim of societal norms that are pressuring him to perform a certain way and to maintain his identity a certain way, but it's also putting him at risk of being enslaved, like, and ruining his life. Like, it's interesting because, like, so many people say that, like, toxic masculinity is what critics of toxic masculinity define as, I guess, regular masculinity. Like, they always say that, like, toxic masculinity is just masculinity, basically. And it's like, The problem is that masculinity is not the problem. It's the rippling effect of a social set of norms that perpetuate a certain behavior that is harmful because of a perceived gender identity. So if you're a man and you don't necessarily feel that you have to be the breadwinner, and maybe you aren't the breadwinner, maybe you're disabled even, and you are heterosexual, and you live with a woman who is also heterosexual, cisgender woman who is also heterosexual, and do you then feel like you failed at life? That's a really sad way to live. Not necessarily that you are disabled, but because you feel bad about the fact that you can't fulfill this societal role. Like, that is not necessary. I think some people they overlook, and honestly me too in some cases. We overlook really positive, aspects of ourselves. And we even go as far as to highlight and hyperfixate on negative things in our lives. Negative things that we overanalyze about sometimes, and so that in itself ripples effects into other harmful behaviors, sometimes inwardly, sometimes outwardly. And I think that's what straightness does. It creates this ripple effect of harm. And it not just harms adults, it also harms children. This is one way in which straightness as a system of social relations feeds into and is fed by capitalism. Particularly capitalist economic neocolonialism and its quest to ravage the people and the land of the global south. Both members of the couple are oppressed and wounded by these set of social norms which exist outside of the two of them, which has dictated the right and wrong way for them to express their feelings to each other. She feels entitled to a diamond and feels that it hurts when he doesn't provide. He is expected to provide, and he feels his masculinity called into question if he doesn't. Finally, he ends up enslaved in debt to the banks and credit card companies that make tremendous profit off the two of them. Their straightness is integral to a capitalist set of social relations that is built off of environmental destruction and genocide against people in the global south who feed them into an institution of debt slavery. This Damoclinian sword over all of our heads, it ruins people's lives. It really does. And that's why I'm saying it's just greatness, not much just to be destroyed. It's it's also really harmful to everyone, including children. Genuinely. Two straight identified cisgender men are best friends and feel a deep love for each other. They go out of their way to express this affection to each other without challenging their privilege as straight men. Subconsciously creating excuses to touch each other. Fortunately for them, there are a plethora of such forms of expression available in straight society. Wrestling, for instance. Straight society is full of supposedly desexualized excuses. Desexualized excuses for two male bodies to touch. But the two of them will never simply hold each other. We can see it. It is not simply a matter of them being straight people. We are looking beyond straightness and as an identity, but rather straightness is an internalized set of social relations that dictate the acceptable and unacceptable ways in which the two of them may physically interact. Wrestling, moshing, various forms of hazing, and real physical violence. These are all contexts through which the internal contradictions of straightness may and is very homophobic. Because it kind of like makes homophobia, it makes homophobia like very natural, like to be afraid of being perceived as gay or homosexual or any words you can think of. It's just I fucking hate these people who like they have to question their like they don't question, they refuse to question. I hate these people who refuse to question shit. Like, I feel that people should always be questioning shit. Like, question me, question yourself, question your past, question your future, question the state, question the teacher, question the police, question all these different forms of oppression, including homophobia, transphobia, racism, sexism, misogyny, fucking Western chauvinist ass pieces of shit, fucking violent oppression. Like, all these people who do this shit, question them. This, like, that's what I mean. Like, question. Gotta question that shit. You gotta question that shit, y'all. Sorry, I'm banging the table. My anarchy symbol. I should probably draw like an anarchy symbol on the table and be like, oh no, my anarchy symbol. I'll do that next time. I could probably do it after the stream, maybe. I got like red fingernails. Maybe we can do something after that, like with relating to that, if I could remember to do it. Y'all gotta remind me though. Don't let me leave the stream without me doing that. But anyway, where were we? Okay, a cisgender man identifies as straight and is very homophobic. He meets a woman he is attracted to and they go somewhere to have sex. In the process, he finds that she has male genitalia. He flips out and reacts violently against her. This is a fear that many trans women, such as her, must constantly deal with. He beats her and calls her a bunch of slurs. I'm going to skip that part. And other dehumanizing things. You need to step out and kind of like take a deep breath after that. That's totally fine. You can absolutely pause the video and return. I'm sorry that if that caused any discomfort or it brought hard feelings from the past, hard emotions, and unpacked a bunch of things. I did give a trigger warning in the beginning of the stream, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry that I didn't repeat it. But I do want you all to know that you can pause and come back another time. It's always fine. I will never get mad at you for doing that. Please come back and watch when you're ready. You can also watch other videos. You can also watch my videos and other people's videos. You can do whatever you want, friend. I just want to make sure that y'all know that I will try to do better at that in the future. I'll try to maybe repeat certain content warnings before that happened again. I think I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna skip the rest of that because it's just like, yeah, there's just like, yeah. I think we talked about the whole like trans women being afraid of getting murdered because of that bullshit, and I think I'd rather, because it's kind of sensitive to me, I'd rather not continue that for my own safety. And I know other people in the chat will also have a difficult time listening as well if I continue. So, but it is true and it's valid, and I think it's one that I think we need to dive into another time. A young cisgender boy first learns about anarchism by going to punk shows. He feels naive but doesn't want to show it. He hears from his friends about how real punks and real anarchists do things. It's all tremendously macho. He feels pressured to perform a certain form of anarchism because he feels his masculinity is threatened if he doesn't. Other older straight cis male anarchists pressure him to take part in an action involving property destruction. He doesn't totally feel comfortable doing it, but he feels the need to prove himself and prove his straight masculinity. He gets arrested, and turns out that the older anarchists who pressured him were government agents who set him up. They took advantage of his vulnerability, particularly his need to perform in a certain type of anarchist straight masculinity, in order to entrap him. He ends up spending a long time in prison. Regardless of the forms of desire this young person may feel, queer liberation for him would have meant having the strength to be vulnerable. The strength to say no and not to be masculinely baited by the cops. The irony is that this form of straight masculinity is an enormous vulnerability for straight males and those who associate with them. In other words, straight male or straightness is a threat to security culture. It gets in the way of your fucking praxis, folks. Like, you gotta keep that in mind too. It gets in the way of your fucking praxis. Oh, watch out for that shit. It gets bad. Various forms of queerness exist inside everyone. People who identify as straight are people who have, to varying degrees, suppress this queerness, but that doesn't mean it doesn't pop up sometimes. There are the contradictions of straight, or these are the contradictions of straightness, the ways in which straight identified people police their own straightness and then sometimes violently project that woundedness onto others, you know, and particularly queer and trans people are all forms of violence both psychological and physical, that are inherent to the social institutions that is straightness. This straightness predominantly and primarily oppresses queer people. For instance, the woman who was subjected to transphobic violence, but also confines straight people, it forces straight people to take loans to assimilate to a particular model of showing affection. It forces straight people to kill a little part of them, sometimes endangering themselves and those around them. This struggle to abolish straightness is a struggle that plays out within anarchist and anti-capitalist communities as well as in capitalist society at large. That's a good critique, and I think it's also very important that, like, anarchist spaces are always evolving. Anarchists are always evolving. Anarchist, understanding of class analysis and everything is always evolving. Because capitalism is evolving. The mode of production is always evolving. And that's why anarchist action and anarchist resistance against capitalist hegemony is part of the tactics that will achieve the inevitable mode of production that is communism. Assuming that capitalism is abolished by whatever socialist and or anarchist method we use to abolish capitalism to create communism. And that's a whole nother can of worms I'm not about to fucking dive into right now. We're not about to get sectarian in this house. Nah. Y'all, Marxists, Leninists, y'all welcome here. Just be respectful. Keep your nose clean, friends. You know what I mean, Jellybean? Just don't do this like, oh, revolutions is violent, therefore you're a hierarchy. It's like, yeah, like if you're comparing the fucking bourgeois revolution of what they call in the lore the American Revolution, if you're comparing that kind of revolution that was, comparatively a settler revolution to evade taxes by the British monarchy, to say a revolution that is trying to to unite people to dismantle an entire oppressive force that is behavioralistically or coercive, then it's just like, yeah, it's different than that. I think though, applying that definition doesn't always mean everything, but I also think at the same time, I also think that there's different ways of approaching revolution, and I also think that sometimes we gotta learn beyond what we're used to reading about from Lenin and Kropotkin. I feel that even that's what made Maoism, and just the evolution of both anarchism and Leninism. I think that's what creates anarchists today. Is the evolution and understanding of class analysis, and I think that's really super fucking important that we hold on to that trend, because as we evolve our understanding of class analysis and how we can use praxis to the advantage of well-being for all, I think we also have to make sure that we look inward for problems that we perpetuate at times, and if we do that, then we will grow and we will succeed and do better, as long as we support all of each other's growth, and all of each other's achievements, successes, and to help rebuild each other. You know, that's really what like I think we need to like focus on. It's kind of like not just outward direct action and community care and mutual aid, but I also think that looking inward to kind of like make sure that you're healthy to be able to achieve that, you know. Anyway, let's continue. So this next section is called Queer Liberation is for Everyone, Queering Anarchism. Hey, it's the name of the book. What does all this mean? What does this all mean? For one, if you're scratching your head now and wondering where there is such a thing as a straight person anymore, good. If your concept of normal is feeling a little less secure, good. Everyone is, in some way or another, alienated, confined, or oppressed by rigid gender roles and sexual mores. In other words, the moral of this story is not just that straightness must be destroyed, but also that queerness and queer liberation is for everyone. There are certainly people with a great deal of straight privilege. We can't forget about that. But what matters the most is you do act in a way that reinforces straightness as an oppressive social institution. For example, do you make gender assumptions about people, assume people are heterosexual, make insensitive assumptions about people's pronouns, preferences, judge people whom you view as gender non-conforming, etc., if you challenge the ways that you have internalized straight forms of social relation and listen to people with less straight privilege than you, then you will become, in a way, less straight. You will become part of the solution. Creating a better world for queer and trans folks and queer experiences outside and sexuality within the shadows of this world. When we talk about queerness as something separate from identity, something beyond just queer people, we see as a set of desires, relationships, and ways of being, ways of acting, and forms of gender and sexuality that are violently repressed through various means by straightness. In other words, it is straightness that insists all bodies must be either must be either male or female. It is straightness that dictates those whose bodies don't fit the binary model of sex and gender must be mutilated at birth. It is straightness that says male bodies people must identify as men and act as men. It is straightness that says female body people must identify as women and act as women. It is straightness that confines us to certain limited numbers of acceptable ways to express our desires. Everyone who dares to defy these prescriptions and all the desires we feel that fall outside of them, this is queerness. Those of us who live the most visibly outside of the straight norms are often subjected to violence. Trans women, drag queens, and effeminate gay men, along with bull dykes and trans men, are the most common target of straight men's projecting their own traumas around gender and sexuality. straight people, especially straight men, as the people with the privilege in our society when it comes to gender and sexuality have an obligation as part of an anarchist movement to unlearn their own gender and sexual assumptions. All of us have an obligation to unlearn straightness, to unlearn the ways that we have been socialized into straightness, much like the ways in which we have been socialized into capitalism. Awesome, we have a little over a page. After this, I will start reading the chat and then we will wrap up. So, yeah, and then we can just kind of hang out. I'm gonna try to make that anarchy symbol on my. I haven't forgotten yet. Don't let me forget, because I still haven't shown you Ami yet. But this is in my bedroom because Ami's in the living room, and I think I forgot to do it last time. So I owe you pictures of Ami. We'll do that. Amin's a good boy. He's a good baby bonbon, and I miss him. I want to pet him and give him kisses. Anyway, there's an old situationist slogan that calls to, quote, kill the cop inside your head. Killing your inner cop means abolishing capitalist ways of thinking, abolishing the messages the state has fed us and we have internalized. This is a hard and painful process, and it is never fully complete. Part of killing your inner cop and dismantling internalized hierarchies is deconstructing forms of oppression inside of you that you have internalized. Class society, racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, ableism, ageism. All of these forms of oppression as part of systematic hierarchies we internalize. Everyone who is an anarchist and wants to work to better create to create better worlds need to work on all of these struggles within themselves as part of the larger anti-capitalist and anti-statist struggle. Part of killing the cop inside your head means addressing internalized straightness. Vosh. I'm just being a dork right now. But this is true. I mean, I've had to go through that too. We've all kind of had it at some point in our lives. And we just react differently to it. And I think like questioning that, is kind of good. It's a good kind of like mental exercise, you know. The struggle for liberation is one that extends the small scale to the large scale and back again. From the small scale, intimate world of our own personal relationships, deep down our mind and our bodies and our souls, to the large scale world of global capitalism, the struggle for queer liberation, and the struggle to abolish straightness. These are inseparable from anti-capitalist and anti-statist struggle. The collective effort to abolish straightness is that it's one that serves to benefit all in the long run. The collective effort to abolish straightness, to allow for queer forms of gender, sexuality, identity, and performance out of the closet and into our own anti-capitalist struggles. This is the kind of liberation for all. This is a kind of liberation for all. Taking the time to reevaluate the language we use to communicate about gender and sexuality, and the assumption that we make about people, body, and desires, including our own, is not only absolutely essential for the inclusion of queer people in our struggles, it is essential for the inclusion of the queerness that is present inside of us all. This kind of queerness or queer praxis and its radical inclusion that it allows is absolutely essential for any kind of genuine anti-hierarchical, anti-capitalist, anti-status struggle. There's a little bit, oh yeah, and then the rest of it's actually just one single footnote. I'll just read the footnote and we're pretty much done. Please note, I am not arguing that there is anything inherently straight about property destruction. Oh, this is from when they mentioned property destruction. There are plenty of anarchists out there who practice various forms of direct action, including property destruction and other forms of action, in ways that are conscious of the intergroup's power dynamic. What I am concerned with is not with which particular form of anarchist politics are used, but rather the cult of machismo within many anarchist communities, and the ways in which these forms of machismo make straight men and those around them vulnerable. Anarchists can, you know what? We are the most likely to deviate from normative culture, but you know what? Yeah, we do at times embrace normative culture that is also harmful, and that's why we need to, again, like I said, always advance our understanding of class analysis and our utilization of praxis. I'm going to go down through the list. Hello, friend. We're looking at chat now. Joseph Winkler. Thoughts on Bill Maher calling himself a working class normie, and then he's worth $130 million. I don't really watch Bill Maher TBH, but I mean, Bill Maher has said maybe like what I say, I have mixed feelings about different things. Like, he said some good things at times, said some bad things. I don't really watch him. I don't really watch TV, or I don't have HBO or whatever he's on. And if anything, I just don't watch him. He's kind of just someone I hear about from time to time. Speaking of rabbits, show us the bunny. I will. I'll probably like post a picture or something on the community tab. Honestly, I would. Honestly, if I could change my name, it would be Azrael. Did I pronounce it right? Azrael? Let me know if I did. And honestly, if you want to be called Azrael, if that's how you pronounce it, Azrael maybe. I don't know. It's in the chat for those who are wondering. Azrael. I wanted to know if that's correct. But anyway, yeah. Do pick that name and run with it and embrace it. Hell yeah. So, let me see. Kissing the homies goodnight is anti-straightness. Hell yeah. Kiss your homies goodnight, folks. Please kiss your homies goodnight. I will be making sure that everyone gets kisses before we end the stream. So let's see what else. Yeah, show me the bunny. Show me the bunny that gets into the Gal Gaming. Well, maybe. Maybe if y'all are good, I'll show y'all the bunny. I'll consider it. I'm probably going to end up doing it. But I am doing what I said I'd do earlier, and I am making that anarchy sign on the table. So then next time, and I'll show you that too. The next time we can use that as a prop gag. But anyway, good to see you in the chat, Michael. I recommend a video from Intertextual Media about her playlist. Let's Talk About Sex History, which focuses the history on sex mainly from African American female perspective. In Textual Media, don't break the table. Oops, my anarchy symbol. I will check that out. That sounds pretty cool. Maybe send me a link on Discord. Michael, I actually was thinking about you today. I want you to DM me. Please do. I was actually thinking about you today. I was on a walk outside to get some food, and I was actually thinking about you. So, please talk to me. Reach out to me on Discord. I'm actually about to go to sleep very soon. I am very tired. Part of the reason why I was struggling to read a little bit today, because I'm really tired. Holy shit. I'm gonna go to bed soon. I'm crashing. I'm trying to fight so I don't crash. But I think it looks like everyone's kind of had a good time. And honestly, I want to say, you know what? Hey, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having this discussion. So let's do this. Let's show you the bunny. I can't take the microphone with it, but I will show you the bunny. Oh, no. Oops, my Antifa flag. I had to blow up the candle too.